Jesus went out of the house and went down to the sea, and such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat, and he told them many things in parables, saying, "A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came. Gobbled them all up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground without much soil, and they sprang up quickly, but when the sun came out, they were scorched and withered away. Other seeds fell amongst thorny weeds, and the thorns grew up and choked them. But others fell on good, fertile soil and brought forth grain. 100-fold, some 60, some 30. So let anyone with ears listen. Christian teachers have long prized the verses that follow from this story, verses which you could take prematurely as a definitive key to its content. Misunderstanding equates exclusively, then, to the fate of the seed on the path, and so on. This would be to miss the wood for the trees. For what Matthew and his collected memories of Jesus offer us is the imperative of the creatively close connection of everyday human life with the Word of God made flesh. The closing comment to the crowd, "Let anyone with ears listen." That's an invitation to do more than hear. To listen attentively and imaginatively, and like the rain, let the story, which is not at all unrealistic, not outside their experience, come down from heaven, from the sky, and not return there until they have made the earth of our lives bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater. And yet everything that could go wrong in the sowing does go wrong, or so it appears. So striking from the outset is this apparent inconsistency between the shoddiness of the sowing and the more than sufficient outcome of the harvest. Should we see the failure of growth, the feeding of the birds, and the vigorous competition of the non-food plant, should we see those as tragedies and as wastefulness? Without the harvest timescale view, we would get caught in the thicket of imagined and grudging frustration of a sower at what goes to the birds and the weeds and the stones. And yet the farmer, at the end of the day, has no cause for such distress, no grounds for despair. The sower works with and not against the ways of creation. God's thoughts are not our thoughts, extending both to value and to waste, though we are all too slowly discovering that the assessment of the value of a species, a habitat, or an ecosystem can be profoundly mistaken if the only criteria taken into account are those susceptible to the measurements of human money-based economy. It's desperately sad, therefore, that to see a UK Prime Minister stoop to the contemptuous criticism of newt counting as he contemplates relaxation of environmental protection. Today, divine and earth-based wisdom prompt that we grasp that unless the sower unwittingly does feed the birds and does allow for the weeds and even the stony ground, no harvest will be forthcoming. The balance, the ecology, is already there in the story. It's taken for granted by Jesus, the storyteller, though we need it pointed out. And thanks to the brevity of the story, as Jesus tells it, nothing is said here of caterpillars who are elsewhere ordained by God, but kept in check by these same birds. Nothing is said of the pollinators, which need the weeds as much as they need the intentional flowering of the fruit crop to do their work. Now we return to the gospel. For the key, the explanation, if you will, is by no means superfluous, the word of the kingdom. The word of the kingdom is expressed here through the cycles of creation of the sky as much as a more detached idea of heaven, which must never in any case be thought of as outside creation. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. So don't despair that not everyone is going to take notice. Keep praying, keep hoping, keep sowing. As for what was on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while, and when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. This is harder to hear. Trouble and persecution are all around. The pandemic has wiped away from so many the awareness of the wider emergency, of which it has been just one symptom. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. Here we are back at the crossroads of recovery, to build better and build greener, or fall back into the choking power of the lure of wealth, of GDP instead of welfare, of privileged profit instead of wholesomely shared prosperity. Here we are when, having breathed the clearing air and heard the birds sing, we climb back into our cars and planes and drown them out once more. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. Fling the seeds wide and live by faith. But we are the seeds.